God is my refuge and strength, my ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth give way, and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea. Though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake with their surging, there is a river whose streams make glad the city of God. God is within her. She will not fall. God will help her at the break of day. Nations are in uproar. Kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice and the earth melts. Be still and know that I am God. Good. So today was a full day, but I'm excited to get to do this with you guys and just say thank you for letting me love on your kids. I count it a very, very high honor, and they are so precious, and I love watching them grow. And I think being the age that I am and living the life that I've lived, my heart becomes like a patchwork of memories, and those memories begin to inform my choices now. And my hope, I have no idea if I'll only be with these children for a moment, just a moment in their life, or if I'll get the honor to walk with them for a really long time. I don't know. Life has so many bends and changes and choices, but obviously I hope that the impressions made will last for forever. And I was a child that was so invested in. I had so many adults throughout my life that took time out of their day to love on me. Boy, there has been tremendous fruit in my life because of that investment. And we are a young church, and we were reminiscing this week about my very first kids moment. I've said it before, I will always remember it. Oh, I'm supposed to leave that there, sorry. When Kanan was my only little kid, because Ada was just months old. I can't remember. She was not able to come up for kids moment. She was ill. And we were doing a practice service at Galileo's, and I asked Zach and Jenny if we could just kind of have a practice kids moment. I think Kanan might have been 2. I don't know if he was even 2. I just remember when it was time for kids moment, I was like, okay, we're gonna have kids moment, and his little voice said, I'm here, Miss Sherri. I'll never forget it, and I held him, and we did kids moment like this. And what a joy it has been watching these children grow. And now we did kids moment, and we reached out and we set up all of those mats. This youth group, I cannot say enough. I could just wail. Yes, at the gift that they give. And I know you guys know it and you say it. But those kids are growing up and they're going to leave. And so I think I'm also just taking a minute to say, pray with me for these children. That makes me cry. No, I don't want to cry. Know that tears are in my heart, but I'd like them not to come to my face. But if you feel a compelling or a nudge to invest with me in loving these children, I invite you, and would love to talk about what that really looks like. We're going to start like rotating, because the students are really ready to begin to listen, and they've been giving every single Sunday for 3 years with the children, and I think we're going to start like a rotation if you'd like to be a part of that. But don't do it if you're going to be grumpy, because nobody likes to be grumpy with children, right? Do it if you love them and you really see them and you want to listen to their stories, because I think they're the best. Just love them. Okay, that's my commercial. I've been looking forward to this Sunday for a long time, and I have I hope a word that will be encouraging to share. Today we're celebrating Prince of Peace, and the auntie will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And I love this topic so much. I have personally become addicted to peace. I pay attention a lot to where peace is, because I do believe it's an indication of where God's Spirit is. And I tend to guide my life when I really sense there's a lot of peace in this direction or in this choice or whatever. All right, so I'm going to pray, settle my own heart, and then we'll jump into these words. Jesus, thank you so much for the gift of you. None of us can even fathom the length that you went to come here and rescue us. We try our best. We stand on our tippy toes and we put snowflakes on the ceiling and we wear glitter and we sing songs, but there's nothing that can reach back to the length of the distance that you reached to come and give us these stories to tell and these songs to sing. There aren't enough days on earth, there aren't enough words on the planet, there's not enough voices to properly thank you or praise you for saving us. We feel it now in this little moment, the darkness that seems to be getting darker, but your light is just getting brighter. And thank you for giving us something to celebrate, something so beautiful and so perfect. Thank you for giving us such a fantastic story to tell our children and our grandchildren. That there is hope, that you do not have to be afraid, and that all of this around us is fading, but you are not fading. You are eternal, and we can rest there. And I pray, Lord, that you'll help these words make a difference in these lives the way that they made a difference in me, or even in different ways. I just love you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. So I wanted to tell a story this morning. You can hand me my sweater. I forgot to bring that up here. Some of you have seen me with this sweater, but I wanted to have it here to mention at the beginning. When I was a little girl, I was a surprise baby. So my brother and sister are 9 and 11 years older than me, and my parents were a little older when I came. So when I was sitting at the table, often on Sunday afternoons and sometimes midweek, when the table would be filled with all of my family or friends or neighbors, there were many, many times I couldn't follow the conversation because I was so young and they were so much older than me. But I loved being at the table. I loved hearing their voices, and I loved the passion and the communication and the sense of love. But I would often, instead of trying to sit at the table and understand what was going on, I would go over to my dad, and he always sat at the head of the table, and I would touch his leg, and that's all I would have to do, and he'd look down at me and say, "Is it lap time?" And I would say yes. And he'd scoop me up, and I would sit on his lap the remainder of the conversation. I didn't make any contribution to the conversation. I didn't even understand the conversation. I just sat in the comfort of his lap and knew that I was loved and I was safe and I was welcome and I was protected. And that is a picture of peace. I don't understand it. I can't make a contribution to it, but I know where to go to sit and to know that I'm held, I'm loved, protected, provided for. That's the whole thing. We're going to say more, but that's the whole thing today. Peace is important. When this is my dad's sweater, and I wear it all the time when it gets cold like this. I don't know if you have an item of comfort. Maybe your parent gave you a blanket, or maybe as a parent you've given your child an item of comfort, a blanket or a lovey or whatever, and when they're struggling, you hand them that item of comfort. I kept this because it's like I can wrap it around me and remember that peace, that belonging, that place. And I was thinking about this story at Christmas time, and I believe the scriptures teach us that this is a story that leads us to peace. This is an item of comfort that we can pull on. This is a place to go where we can sit when we don't understand the conversation and when we can't make a contribution. But we got to find somewhere to harbor and find peace. So the angels gave us the clue. We've written lots of songs about it, but that night when they made the announcement to the shepherds, the phrase they said was, this is going to be something that will create peace on earth for men. The angels said, this thing that's about to happen is going to shift the story for the humans on earth to have peace. Zechariah, John's father, says it in his prayer or his prophecy over John. He says, John, you will prepare the way for the Lord, and you will help them to find the path of peace. I could think about that all day long. The path of peace. There are so many roads that confront us. Jesus came so we could find the path to peace. There's another clue. John 14:27, Jesus says, my peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. In John 16:33, he said, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. Philippians 4:7, we know this verse, talks about don't be anxious about everything, pray about everything, and then it says, and the peace of God which transcends understanding will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. And the story that I want us to talk about today is the story of the two that walked on the way to Emmaus. And it ends with Jesus saying to them, peace be to you. This whole thing is about us arriving at peace. And I believe this is Jesus saying, my peace I give you. I'm not asking you to figure it out. I'm not asking you to make a contribution. I don't know if you're ever going to get it. My peace I give you. Just sit here. Hold on. I got it. Wrap up in my peace. And this isn't my sweater. It doesn't belong to me. I didn't buy it. My dad gave it to me. It's his. It belongs to him. I put on his sweater. It's not my peace. I can't find it in me. I can't conjure it up. I put on his peace. He gives me his peace. Oh. We get so tricked because the enemy is so loud and so accusey and so shame on you and so you better figure it out or else or what if, Jesus never says what if. The enemy uses that a whole lot. But what if this happens, you better be prepared. What if this happens, you better be ready. What if you be afraid, you be afraid, you be afraid. And the big announcement of the angels was don't be afraid. They led with that in every conversation. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. This story is going to lead you to peace. So I want us to look at this beautiful story. I'm going to be quoting a lot from this book that I cannot recommend enough. It's called With Burning Hearts. If you haven't read it, by Henry M. Nouwen. It's just a very simple little devotional, but it's a man who gave himself to leading people through they call it the road to Emmaus, the Eucharist, come to the table to have communion with Jesus, this whole experience, and he gave his life to studying the story. And his meditations over the years fell into this book, and I could have eaten the pages. So I'm going to share with you unashamedly several of his thoughts because I cannot say them better myself. Just as an intro, here's where this thing is going. The stranger from Nazareth had made everything new. He had made them into a people for whom the world was no longer a burden, but a challenge. No longer a field of snares, but a place of endless opportunities. He had brought joy and peace to their daily experience. He had made their life into a dance. Wow. I think we're entering into the moments. I think we felt it last night at the joy of the snowball. When the world is so afraid and growing dark, and we still dance. And we hang up beautiful decorations, and we are silly, and there is joy. It is palatable. How could we be such people? Because we believe this story. We believe that we don't have to understand, and we don't have to make a contribution. We just have to believe that God has got this thing. And not only do we believe it, we celebrate it. And that makes us more and more shiny as we live in these days. And I do believe, my Christian brothers and sisters, this is why we will make great impact in the days that are coming. It's because we're going to be so shiny with our faith and our love. All right, we're going to read in Luke chapter 24. I have the NIV, and I'm going to read a little bit and talk a little bit like I do. So I'm going to start at verse 13. Preceding this, in the earlier portion of the first 12 verses, is the story of Jesus' resurrection and Mary and going to the grave and having the encounter. Okay, so verse 13. Now that same day, 2 of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them. I love that so much. Oh, I gotta keep going. Okay. But they were kept from recognizing him. Alec would love this. Alec loves surprises and mystery and secret. If he could do this, he would. He would walk up and not let you recognize him. Am I right? Yes, I know. Okay, verse 17. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" I love Jesus and his questions. They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one living in Jerusalem who doesn't know the things that happened here?" And Jesus says, "What things?" You know, these guys are 80-year-old men going back to that moment, right there, laughing their heads off. What things? Tell me, what happened? Well, about Jesus of Nazareth, they replied. He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. Big sentence here. But we had hoped. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the 3rd day since all this took place. And in addition to that, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb this morning, but they didn't find his body. And they came back and told us they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. And some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the woman had said, but him they did not see. He said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all the prophets have spoken. Did not the Christ have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. And we know that that was about a 7-mile walk. I don't know where Jesus encountered them on the way, but it makes me hope they might have had an hour and a half. And I don't know what it means when Jesus starts with Moses and turns right and just talks shit through. Like, this is what went down. So my question to you this morning is, what are you mulling over right now? What are you mourning? What makes your face downcast? I'm going to read you this next part as you think about that question. There we go. But we had hoped. Oh, shoot, I was supposed to give myself notes. Let's see. When the disciples walking to Emmaus told their story about their great loss, they also told that strange story about the women who had found the tomb empty and had seen angels, but they were skeptical and doubtful. Wasn't he crucified a few days ago? Hadn't everything come to an end? Hadn't evil finally won? So what about these women's tales that he was alive? Who could take that seriously? But then again, they had to say, some of our friends went to the tomb and found it just as the women reported. This is how we generally approach the Eucharist, with a strange mixture of despair and hope. Part of us, looking at our own life and the lives of those around us, want to say, let's forget about it. It's all over. Oh, sure, we thought about a better world, imagined a new community of love, and dreamt about a time in which all people would live together in peace, but the truth has caught up with us. We now know that all of this was little more than an illusion. Our unchangeable character and persistent bad habits, our jealousies and resentments, our moments of anger and revenge, our uncontrollable violence, the countless signs of human cruelty, the crimes, the torture, the wars, the exploitations, all of these have surely woken us up to the bitter truth that our youthful hope has been crucified. And still, the other stories remain and continue to appear. Stories about a few people who saw it differently. Stories about gestures of forgiveness and healing. Stories about goodness, beauty, and truth. And as we listen carefully to the deeper voices in our heart, we realize that beneath our skepticism and cynicism, there is a yearning for love, unity, and communion that doesn't ever go away. Even when there remain so many arguments to dismiss it as childhood sentimental memories. Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy. That's the prayer that keeps emerging from the depth of our being and breaking through the walls of our cynicism. Yes, we are sinners, hopeless sinners. Everything is lost and nothing is left of our hopes and dreams, and yet still there is a voice saying, my grace is enough for you. And we cry again for the healing of our cynical hearts and dare to believe that indeed in the midst of our mourning, we can find a gift to be grateful for. But for this discovery, we will need a special companion. And this is the importance of this journey of two people in a very sad moment. But because the Bible is already written, we know those two are going to end up at peace. But I think it's super important that we pay attention to the steps that Jesus took with them. He showed up and he walked beside them as a stranger in the middle of their pain and their questions, and he just walked with them and let them ask, and he answered. But now there's a critical change in the story from but we had hoped. But we had hoped. I love this next part, and I can't emphasize it enough. I want to put highlights and glitter and like explosive bombs like they do at App State when they get a touchdown, like boom, like the whole town knows, oh, App State just scored. I want to be like, this is one of those moments. Okay, so they're walking along, they're talking, they're asking all the questions, we're at Moses, we're turning right, we're getting all the way through the prophets, and then we get to this last part, and in verse 28, as they approached the village that they were going to enter, Jesus acted as if he were going on further. I love him so much. All right, now y'all just have a good evening. I'm going to go on about my... I don't know. It doesn't tell us. The Bible leaves out so many details. Why were they on their way to Emmaus? I don't know. What were they going to do when they got there? I don't know. But this doesn't seem like it was the plan. So there's a little interruption. And it says that Jesus acted as if he were going to go further. Verse 29, first word. But. Got to pay attention to those. Plot change. But they urged him strongly, stay with us. Oh, boys and girls, if we were in a black church, this is where the organ would start going, and they'd be starting to go, and I can't do it because I can't, but I love it. And they'd start saying, this is where the story is about to change, because they urged him strongly, stay with us. Oh, is there anything Jesus wants to hear more? They don't even know who he is yet. Stay with us. What does urge him strongly look like? I don't know. But the theater director in me wants to say, well, maybe they ran up behind him and they grabbed onto his arm and they pulled really hard. They urged him strongly. Or they said, hey, Jesus, don't go. Wait, I haven't made it. Why don't you take your plate? Come. Whatever it wasn't this. Okay, stay if you want to. Right? It wasn't apathetic. It wasn't without emotion. It wasn't with a lot of pride. They urged him strongly. So there was a humility in that emotion. Jesus, stay with us. But they don't have to say Jesus because they didn't know it was him. So, hey, stranger guy, stay with us. It is nearly evening and the day is almost over. So he went in and stayed with them. Of course he did. Oh, and now the story changes. It gets so good. And this is our path to peace, everybody. So you can walk with a stranger and you can mull over all your disappointments, but there will become a moment, a critical moment, where you have to decide if you want the stranger to become a friend. Because he'll just keep on walking by, and he'll meet you on another road, and another road, and another road, and you can continue to mull over your disappointments, or you can finally invite the guy to your table and sit with him, and let him look you in the eyes, and that's what's about to happen, is he comes in, and they sit down, and they share a meal. And Jesus begins, it says, when he was at the table with them, he took the bread. This is a good movie. Alec, I'm sorry, I keep thinking of you. But this is the mystery revealed. I mean, I can just think Jesus like, this is going to be awesome. Like, how am I going to let him know it's me? How am I going to work that into the conversation? Oh, by the way, I'm the Messiah. I'm the one that just died and went to heaven and came back, and it's all good. Everything's taken care of. How is he going to say it? He doesn't say it, which is another cool thing about Jesus. He just breaks the bread. And when he breaks the bread, their eyes are opened. And they see him, and he is revealed to him. Then their eyes were open, and they recognized him, and then he disappeared from their sight. Then they asked each other, were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened up the scriptures? The breaking of the bread. The breaking of the bread. This is what Jesus was essentially saying. You foolish people, don't you see? Don't you hear? Don't you know? You have been looking at a little bush, not realizing that you're on the top of a mountain that offers you a worldwide view. You have been staring at an obstacle, not willing to consider that the obstacle was put there to show you the right path. You have been complaining about your losses, not realizing that these losses are there to enable you to receive the gift of life. What Jesus did when he walked with them on the road and sat with them at the table is he reframed the whole picture. They were counting it as a loss, and he showed them that it was an overcoming, conquering, on-purpose victory of God that was planned from the beginning of time. He reframed the whole story as they sat together at the table. And I want to ask you guys, with whatever you're mulling over, whatever you're mourning, whatever has eclipsed your peace, to sit at the table with Jesus and bring it to him in communion and let him allow the sovereign big picture to invade your little Emmaus Road experience and see if it doesn't flip it. To go, I am not out of control. I am not lost at the table. I am not overwhelmed by the conversation. I am held by the one who knows what's going on, and all I got to do is sit right here and take his peace. And it invades their spirit so much they are transformed from guys looking down, it says downcast, to guys looking at Jesus and then looking up, which is where we're going into this next thing. And this next thing is, sometimes words burn in me, and these words burn in me, I think for Mountainside, and I want to tell you, there is nothing I love more than a long conversation at the table. I love when I'm with my friends and the conversation is so good that we shut the restaurant down, like the wait staff is sweeping under our feet. And they come back 15 times, can I get you anything else? Which basically means, can you get out? I love when one phrase catches another phrase. A good conversation to me is like an orchestra. It's a gift. It's so beautiful. And I am a girl who could have stayed at that table with Jesus for the rest of my life. I'm good. I'm done. I don't need to do anything else. How amazing that after they see him, he disappears. Oh, we are not home yet. There will be a table that we never have to leave. But we're not home yet. Jesus wasn't going to let them get all of it. He let them see him, and in that moment that they saw him, they saw their purpose and their calling. And this next thing, church, please ask Holy Spirit, hear this word. Verse 33, they got up and returned to Jerusalem. Y'all, that was a 7-mile walk. Yeah. It's the end of the day. But whatever infused in their spirit was so strong, they had to tell it. It was an uncontainable word. It was not a word that was supposed to stay at the table. It was a word that demanded action. It moved them into their life. An inconvenient moving. That's a long walk at the end of the day. But it didn't matter anymore. I don't care that I'm tired. I got something I got to say. And listen, it's not just the two men on the way to Emmaus. It's exactly what happened to Andrew in John chapter 1. After he spent one day with Jesus, he said he had to go immediately and find his brother and say, I found the Messiah. And it's not just Andrew, and it's not just Emmaus. It's Mary Magdalene. As soon as she sees the risen Christ and she holds on to him, he says, don't hold on to me, go and tell. And she has to run and go tell. This tends to be a result of an encounter with Jesus, is you don't sit on it. It makes you move. We don't harbor this stuff. We don't tuck it down and say, well, don't you wish you could come inside? I got all the things going on in here, and it's so peaceful, and it's so wonderful, and I'm so mature, and I love it. And we talk about this a lot. Love the deep place. Everybody knows I love it so much. I can go down there and just eat up all that stuff. But I'm finding that, here's the deal. Jesus didn't stay on the Mount of Transfiguration and go straight to heaven from there. He had a great long talk. I bet you it was an amazing conversation with Elijah and Moses. I have no idea what they were talking about, but I can only imagine. But Jesus wasn't done with his job yet. So he came down off the mountain and he led the way to Jerusalem. So the word that I feel so strongly for us as a church is that our encounter with Christ isn't just one that stays, but it's one that makes us move. In some way we listen to the we gotta tell. We gotta give this away. We've got to share it. And this peace, to me, it's the most beautiful story. Oh, I forgot, I gotta finish it. Okay, so they get up to tell, and they're hoofing it back the 7 miles. And they bust into the room, and they say, it's true. Well, the women said, we just sat with Jesus on the table, but they can't get it fully out, like the whole sentence, because Jesus, poof, he appears. Right in the middle of that scene. And he says, peace be to you. Oh, I love it. He vanishes and he appears. Just to put an exclamation point on the day. I got you. I'm not asking you to understand this. I'm not asking you to make a contribution that is way above your head. I'm asking you to remain with me, to wear my peace. And that peace will set you apart, and it will give you an overflowing testimony that you just have to tell. So, Lord, I ask you Help us to be people who will mold this over with you. And I pray at some point in the conversation that you won't be a stranger anymore. And I ask at some point in the conversation that we will invite you to sit at the table, go knee to knee, eye to eye. And that when you help us understand your suffering, it will help us understand our suffering and your purpose in it. And Lord, I pray that we will sense that urgency. And as we head into 2022, we will be people who are focused on telling this story. We will be other focused. We will be serving. We will be loving. And I pray that that peace that you came to give us will be so in us, so deeply, deeply in us, that it becomes impenetrable, Lord. I ask for a miraculous gift of your peace, that we would listen to the don't be afraid, and that we would not give in to despair, even though that voice, it seems so loud. I pray that we would hear your voice louder, sitting at the table, saying, how foolish you are, how slow of heart to believe. I pray you help our hearts to burn, and that it will continue to enable us to be people of Advent all year long. Hope and peace and joy and love will mark us as your children. Again, Lord, I thank you for this season, and thank you for this story. Help us to see where we are in the story and carry us, Lord, to